Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Beth, and today I just finished reading the Book of Daniel by E.L. Doctorow. Um, it's not actually a biblical novel, so if you're thinking that, think again. It's very political, and it follows the Vietnam War and the Cold War. So it kind of shows the two eras in a time warping kind of way. It's definitely flipping from one era to another constantly throughout this book. And I'll get to why that's a good and a bad thing in a little bit. The book was made in 1971 and it's about 300 pages, so it's not very long. This is actually a used copy that I have. The one thing I have to say though is how is this the best novel of the year? I mean, 1971 must have been hurting for good literature. Not to say this is a bad book. It is not. Okay, there are some really nice passages throughout this book. The problem is that there's not enough of them for me to believe that this is one of the most wonderful pieces of fiction that I've ever read in my life. It's actually based on a true story. Not to say that is following that true story very closely, but back during the Cold War era, there was a nuclear family where the mother and father were killed for being communists, essentially, for giving away America's secrets. And this kind of takes that idea and shows what happens to the children of people who were executed by the government unlawfully. Because throughout this book, it really presses this agenda that the mother and father were not guilty for conspiring to take down the American government. And a big part is how they didn't really even need evidence against them to be convicted. And really, the government just wanted them to give names of other supporters and give up what they knew, their knowledge. So that's not ruining anything. All of this is told in the beginning of the book. You are told that the mother and father are dead. Daniel is the main character, and he has a little sister named Susan. And you know all this because it's constantly jumping to and fro. So really, it's about the journey, so to speak. You really are just there to see how all of this affected the children. And I will say this, it does paint communism in a really interesting light. I don't think that it altogether, puts the party on a pedestal, because you do see the communists do in fact turn their back on his parents because they weren't a huge part of the organization. And that's one of the reasons why it was unlawful in the form of this book. Not to say that the actual real story this is based off of wasn't, but this is fiction. I really enjoyed the last 20 pages of this book. Maybe even the 30. Okay, we'll put it right there. That's where the line of demarcation is. I thought it was very well done, very tasteful. I love how it depicts media and its effect on culture and how we experience things and create our own form of knowledge, and how we're not actually delving deep into the knowledge that we know and kind of having a superficial layer over everything. I think it's just beautiful. And you really see throughout this novel how the adults take advantage of these children and they use them for their own political means. You have the original parents that were, convicted, but even before then, they use their children as a form of legacy to move forward with their communist agenda and to push their views on their children, which to a degree is what most parents do. Maybe not politically, but in their ideals and beliefs. And then you have the new parents that are taking them on as new children and have new expectations of these children. And then you have the US government that's using the children and, tries to get them to shut up and show, hey, look how good we were. We gave them a trust fund. Look, they went to college. They're well educated. We didn't ruin their lives. We saved them from their parents. And you also see the Communist Party using them, to get their agenda across in a way, because of what happens later in the novel, and I'm not going to give any spoilers. But I think that it really shows that when you take away a child's parent, they lose that sense of home and that sense of safety, and they don't really have anything to latch on to other than each other, his sister and himself, Daniel. They really have this strange kind of bond, but in the beginning of the novel, you see that it's basically gone. It's not with it, and they can't hold each other together because they've been separated from beliefs and from, just geographically, they're not living near each other, so they don't have that kind of connection they used to. And it hurts them because they can't progress as adults. They seem stuck in this form of infancy. And it might be partially because of the era, during the flower power and peace, but it's mostly because they had this upbringing where they weren't able to be children. They were paraded around as symbols. You see that a lot. Like when they're taking to rallies and people are just stringing them along and they're stuck in a huge crowd and they're losing each other. And once they hear that they're the children of the people getting executed, they get brought up into the air, and there's a really touching scene where his sister is crying and is really upset, and she's scared because she's brought over to the stage almost in a crowd surf, and it's terrifying to her, and she's a child. But people don't care, they just want the symbol. I will say the author does something really despicable in the way of his writing. There is no line to start or stop the main character's narration. Sometimes it's weirdly in the third person. Sometimes it's his mother. Sometimes it's his grandmother. Sometimes it's anybody. All of a sudden it just stops being the main character and is someone else. And it could be the start of a new paragraph. All of a sudden, it could be in the middle of a paragraph. It could be in the middle of a sentence almost. Okay, I won't go that far. It was never in the middle of the sentence. But there were a lot of points in the novel where it will be going. In mid-sentence, it will stop. And then it will start a new paragraph, indented, lowercase. I don't know why that insulted me so much. And I kid you not, this happened once in the novel, where it did that, and it said amazing grace, and then continued on a little tangent for a paragraph that related to nothing. I mean, it related to the theme of the novel, and I guess it expressed on what it was going through, and I get it. But it was pretty much just an artsy thing to throw into the novel that the artist specifically put there. I know that this is a very meticulously thought out book. Like, I love how thought out the time jumps are. While I don't like how they're not marked in the novel, I really would have loved if there was just maybe a diamond or some kind of tilde to say, hey, we're jumping to a new era or a new person. Because I just felt like it was a constant guessing game. And then eventually it'd be like, okay, this is now the mother. This is back to Daniel. And this is weirdly in third person. I still don't get the third person bits. I'm going to be honest. It really upsetted me. But it was just really an artist trying to be very contemporary. That's what I got out of it. I don't think it enriched my reading experience. I think it alienated me from what the author's vision was. But if you want to read a book that kind of touches on the themes of the U.S. screwing over the common man, I would say read the book called The Full Circle. It's about a female that gets convicted of murder and it ruins her life, and she is innocent. And this is actually nonfiction, and it's from her point of view. So check that out if you want. I would not recommend reading this book unless you really are going for those very few sections of the book that are written wonderfully, which they are there. There are plenty of them to read, but I don't think it's worth the read, in my opinion. Or maybe just the last 20 pages. You got the rest of the book, really. They already told you what's going to happen. So thanks for watching my video, and hope you have a good one.